Omaha is in the big breadbasket of the country. In Nebraska. In Big Red football country. Some people have merely heard of the city, but don't know where it is or what it is. But people who do know Omaha also know it is different. It is unlike Boston or Louisville when it comes to the desegregation, yes, court-ordered desegregation of its public school system. In fact, court-ordered desegregation may be the only thing Omaha and Boston have in common. There, the similarity ends. Omaha was in stark contrast to some other cities when court-ordered desegregation was implemented. There were no anti-busing riots here. Police did not roam the halls of school buildings. Instead, schools opened on a peaceful note. The Omaha desegregation story has been described by the news media as a non-story. But it was a non-story only in terms of what happened in such places as Boston and Louisville. For none of the things that happened in those two cities happened here in Omaha. And that is the purpose of this documentary, to show you that in the first year of court-ordered desegregation of the Omaha Public Schools, there was a story, a good story, one which reflected a city's concern for its young people. It is a story of how a mandate, generally an unpopular one, could be carried out by a school system, its students, its parents, its teachers, its administrators, its support staff, and its community without the tragedy that scarred other towns, other cities. Although the Omaha Board of Education has long been on record for an integrated school system, the story of desegregation in the Omaha Public Schools began in 1972, when the U.S. Department of Justice filed suit charging the school system with deliberate actions which resulted in the segregation of students like these. Others joined the suit as interveners. But on October 14, 1974, the U.S. District Court found the school system not guilty.
We are very pleased with the ruling of the United States District Court of the District of Nebraska. It clearly supports the action of the Omaha Board of Education and the administration of the Omaha Public Schools in their past efforts to cope with the social problems which face us. The opinion reaffirms the position of the Omaha Public Schools having taken for the integration of the school system. However, we look upon this opinion as a benchmark from which to carry on our positive program. Though this decision brings much pleasure to the school district, it is an appropriate time for both the board and the administration to reaffirm their commitment to a positive and constructive further integration of this school system. The long-standing record of this district to avoid segregative action is coupled with its efforts for further integration where possible and were in the best interest of all. The work of the Omaha Community Committee and subsequent action by the Board of Education shall continue to focus in this area. The results of the Gallup survey, which represent a profile of the thinking of this community, shall not go unheeded. In that poll, it was clearly noted that this community has a positive attitude toward integration and that constructive activities which are voluntary in nature are viewed favorably by the citizens of this school district. The opinion of Judge Schatz will be studied in detail by the board and the administration and the legal staff to determine its relationship to the operation of the Omaha Public Schools, although the dismissal of the case clearly supports what has been done and what is now the policy of the Omaha.
But the legal battle was far from over. The decision was appealed. On June 12, 1975, the U.S. 8th Circuit Court of Appeals reversed the earlier decision. The school district was ordered to desegregate its teaching staff by the beginning of the 1975-76 school year, less than 3 months away. The Circuit Court further ordered that the student body of the Omaha Public Schools be desegregated by September 1976. Despite the short time span, the desegregation of the staff was completed, and school opened in 1975 on a familiar note.
First days in any school are alike. They're all a little disorganized. All the kids are the same anywhere you go.
I found out children are children. You know, color really doesn't matter.
The Circuit Court set out specific black-white percentages to be used in the development of a plan to desegregate the schools. That plan would have to be complete by December 31st, 1975. Still, the legal battle continued. The school district's attorneys carried an appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court. It was never heard. But at the same time, the Board of Education and the administration of the Omaha Public Schools went about the business of preparing for any eventuality. Superintendent of Schools O&A Knudsen appointed a desegregation task force headed by Dr. Norbert Sherman. The task force was charged with developing a plan for desegregation.
Again, I want to reaffirm to you that the primary objective of the court order is the establishment of a degree of racial balance within the school systems, and in our case, within almost all the buildings within the school system, and that the court's monitoring and reporting provisions, which we'll go over right shortly, deal strictly with the racial mix and the factors related to transportation and reassignment burdens.
The plan the task force was to develop would have to be acceptable to the courts, cause the least inconvenience to the least number of people, preserve and enhance the quality educational program of the Omaha Public Schools, provide for the safety and security of children like these, and still be economically feasible. The problem was carried to the public. All reports of the task force were made in open session of the Board of Education. Dr. Knudsen organized 4 town meetings throughout Omaha to hear what the patrons of the school district had to say and learn how they felt. A cardinal rule was laid down early. Keep the community informed at all times about everything. It was all put together, and on December 31st, 1975, the plan for the desegregation of the Omaha Public Schools was submitted to District Court Judge Albert Schatz for his approval. In the meantime, school continued as usual. Finally, on April 27, 1976, the plan was approved with a few changes. Less than 5 months remained before the desegregation plan was to take effect, and a local citizens group would play a big part in the preparation for that first day of school.
Well, I guess our reaction could be summed up in that we are pleased that we at least have a decision or a plan that's been handed down that from the CCFO point of view, we can now begin to prepare for the implementation of it next September.
5 months may seem like a long time, but there was much to be done. Buildings to get ready. Materials, including library books, had to be redistributed. First graders have little use for books once read by 5th and 6th graders. And perhaps the biggest task of all, transportation had to be arranged for about 10,000 youngsters. The list of things to be done before the opening of school seemed monumental. Still, the primary consideration throughout all the preparation was health and welfare of students like these. In January, Superintendent Knudsen had appointed another group of task forces to handle individual areas which range from instruction to health, safety, and security, to communications and transportation, and all points in between. By midsummer, all reports were in. In the jargon of the space age, all systems were go. Communications played a major part in the success of the first year of desegregation of the Omaha Public Schools. The importance of keeping the community informed was recognized early. In its communications, the school district repeated its stance that while the court order was not popular, that voluntary desegregation was the way to go. The order was the law of the land, and that law must be followed, especially for the good of youngsters like these in the community. This was felt by citizens groups, and during the summer months, they came together under the umbrella of the Concerned Citizens for Omaha. The purpose was simple. Like it or not, Omaha should accept the desegregation of its schools peacefully. The theme, let's make it work. All the time, there was close liaison between concerned citizens and the school system. Desegregation was the topic of discussion in the community that summer. Both the pros and cons of desegregation were debated.
In those cities where the community leadership and citizens did nothing positively, then serious problems resulted. Conversely, where the leadership and citizens acted positively in support of peaceful desegregation, then the results were positive and peaceful.
Studies have showed that not only do the children's scholastic achievements drop the first year after forced busing, but they depreciate at a rate of 3% for each year thereafter. So that after a period of time, these children's scholastic scores begin to reach the 0 percentile rate. Now, none of these things are due to a black and white situation. The reason that the violence comes into the city and rises so drastically is merely because you're sending children into a neighborhood that they don't want to go to. They don't want to be there anymore than you want them there.
We in this country for 190 years had segregation. We had segregated schools. Our forefathers preached and practiced segregation for 190 years, and they created the greatest nation that has ever been on the face of this earth. You cannot tell me that this is coincidental and that they were wrong.
For you men in this room, this is an unparalleled opportunity for you to serve above self, to make a lasting and permanent contribution to the welfare of your city by simply understanding the problem, by recognizing and limiting the dimensions of that problem, by being sympathetic to the emotional conflicts that are inherent in the problem, and by giving support to the authorities as they evolve the plan for the city.
What we are about to experience in Omaha has the effect of law, right or wrong. What we're about to experience here has been experienced in city after city after city across our great land. Most have accomplished school desegregation without property damage or a single child being hurt. It appears about 95% of them. When we speak each day in our busy life, I pray to God that we say things that will only help the educational environment of our community.
The week before school opened, the community and the nation waited and watched. How would Omahans react? The Omaha school staff again checked its planning. Communication efforts reached a peak. The Omaha news media gave full cooperation in getting out information, in answering questions through special television and radio programming, and special articles in the newspapers. Beefed-up telephone information centers were readied at school headquarters
Omaha Public
and at the
School
offices
Information
of the
Center.
concerned citizens.
Concerned citizens, may I help
There
you?
was a logical reason for two different information centers. It was felt that the citizens group might be able to answer questions from the community that a school district center might not, and vice versa.
When we were anticipating the establishment of an office for concerned citizens for Omaha, we talked to a number of people from other communities who had been through the desegregation process and had organizations similar to ours. We also talked to information specialists from the Justice Department. They recommended that it was very important that a citizens group have an information center as well as official information centers through the school district or through the city. The recommendation was based on the fact that citizens organization might have a credibility in the community that the official bodies would not have, and vice versa. They might have a credibility with a portion of the community that a citizens group would not. The two information centers can serve as a check and balance against one another, and hopefully not only can they better serve the public and have credibility, but also when one information center is inundated with calls, people would know that they would have another source for information.
Well, I think in normal times, or has been our experience, you know, that there's many telephone calls at the beginning of a school year. It seems that parents have normal and natural questions to ask, and they seek information. And usually the first 2 or 3 weeks around the opening of a school year, our switchboards are pretty well occupied, and people do have difficulty even getting in on the normal number in normal times. But this year with the court order desegregation, I know the logistics is much greater than it's ever been before, and we have all the kinds of telephone calls that deal with the movement of youngsters out of their neighborhood school areas into other schools buildings, and it encompasses transportation and a lot of this kind of thing. So in addition to the normal calls that you would expect to have at the beginning of an opening of school year, and they would have in any school system, I think you have it accentuated quite substantially this year because of what we're doing.
Since a yellow bus had become a symbol of desegregation, emphasis was placed on safety. On August 29th, parents were invited to ride the buses that their children would be riding on the first day of school. It was also a chance for parents to visit the schools their children would be attending far away from their own neighborhood. Over 5,000 took part in the Parents' Visitation Day that sunny Sunday afternoon.
Well, I don't think that I'm probably any different than anybody else. You're, concerned about the safety. We were, fairly pleased with the route that they took, and I was very impressed with the driver. I can't speak for the rest of the drivers. You hear via the grapevine that they have had some trouble with, filling the driver's positions, but with the driver, and I know in talking to some of the parents from the other schools that came there, they seem to be very well satisfied. I think that's, probably the most important thing. Most of us is to get competent drivers that can drive these buses, and then, of course, being new buses, they should be fairly safe.
That first day of school arrived, September 7th, 1976, when court-ordered desegregation was taken off the drawing boards and put into practice. Newsmen were on hand to cover whatever happened. There were nationwide inquiries. What's happening in Omaha? The answer? School as usual.
Just great. It hasn't been any different than any other first day of the school year. Children were a bit restless because, of course, after having the whole summer off to sit in the hard chairs, by the end of the day they're ready to get out and play. But they all seem to get along very, very well, and all seem to be very much at home in the room.
We've had a very, very good, smooth opening day of school. The planning has been good. The youngsters have come in, and they seem to be happy, and they seem to be cooperative, and most of them seem to be glad to be here.
What is the one thing that teachers are trying to do the first day in the classroom?
The most important thing that teachers are supposed to do the first day at Horace Mann Junior High School is to make our youngsters welcome, to make them feel welcome, to make them feel that they are a part of the school, to make them feel that they're not going to lose anything as a result of integration. In fact, we hope that everybody will be a little bit stronger and that everybody will begin to understand, accept people and so forth, and work well together, etc. And we will accomplish that this year.
Everyone cooperated. The children were lovely, excited, and full of energy, and very happy about the new...
Dr. Knudsen scheduled a news conference shortly after schools opened for the day. Things were going well considering all of the major logistical problems involved. But there were some problems, most of them having 4 wheels.
Well, I'm still looking for those 4 buses.
Many buses ran late or didn't arrive at all. Students were left waiting. Other buses had to be dispatched to pick up those students. Parents, students, and school officials were concerned about this problem.
Right now, my job's to try to keep my language clean enough and my voice quiet enough, because we worked on this last night, and Al Williams has been working on it this morning, and naturally we're going to have some of these problems, but you hate to have a problem on something you know you've given your own personal attention to, and maybe this next bus coming down the line might be one that's ours, but
Oh, wow.
you know, there just isn't any reason for something like this 2 days straight.
Despite the logistics problems, news stories of the day reflected that generally the first day of court-ordered desegregation had indeed gone well. And so it went the second day, and the third. The burr under the desegregation saddle seemed to be the problem with the buses. But where were the problems that were found in Boston, in Louisville? Seemingly, they were submerged under the feeling the community had for these boys and girls. Through the fall of 1976, kids found out that kids on the other side of town were very much like themselves. New acquaintances were made, and friendships started. The fears which had hovered over Omaha began to dissipate. Desegregation was still not popular, but it didn't seem as bad as first supposed. The community watched the thousands of young people take the challenge of change in stride and followed. There were problems for the Omaha School District. The transportation system was still not what it should be, but it was improving. Neighborhood pickup points were introduced. The reaction to the court-ordered desegregation was still one of resentment. Anti-busing groups pledged to continue the fight to halt the busing of kids. Then came the report on the enrollment in the Omaha Public Schools. The flight of students and their families from the school district was evident in the official figures for the school year. New housing starts were up in areas outside the Omaha School District, and enrollments in many outlying districts were reflecting the growth. The Board of Education also decided to continue its appeal of the court order to the Supreme Court. The desegregation effort may have had another effect upon the community. In the November election, voters rejected some members of the Board of Education who were seeking re-election. There was some feeling that their stance on following the dictates of the Court of Appeals was a major factor in the election.
Well, I'm afraid it had a very profound effect. My opponent said that me and the other members of the board failed to anticipate busing and take action to prevent it. I assume then that we are responsible and therefore being defeated because we have busing. And I think from what I've heard that at least many of the people feel that way. I think it's unfortunate because 70 other cities in the country are now in the same category. Regardless of what they did, they ended up busing, regardless of how they tried to avoid it. I don't think Laramie, Wyoming could have avoided being forced to bus if they followed the criteria handed down by the 8th Circuit Court of Appeals. So we didn't have much choice, really.
Well, I think it's easier when you're not an incumbent and don't have to defend some of the things that may be distasteful to the voters. I'm not so sure how big a an item that was, how much effect that had on the overall outcome, I would say this, that I think there were some people who felt that all incumbents were responsible in part for the desegregation plan. I think some of that's true, some of that's unfounded. I just feel that I am fortunate that I was not an incumbent because they took some lumps, warranted and unwarranted, over the desegregation plan.
The story of the first weeks of the 1976-77 school year in reality is the story of the first year of court-ordered desegregation in the Omaha Public Schools. The prediction that if anything happened, it would happen in the first weeks held up. Nothing that made news in Louisville and Boston happened here. What happened was that a commitment of all segments of the Omaha community made the court order work for the benefit of these children. It was more than a normal year. In fact, it was better than that. And it all came from a better than normal start. In September 1976, Dr. Knudsen said, "The opening of a school year under the most normal of circumstances is always exciting and demanding. But the opening this year had the ingredients and complications never before experienced by the Omaha Public Schools. These included the physical movement of thousands of young people, hundreds of teachers, and thousands of those things needed for the education of girls and boys. All of this could have meant confusion, the lack of enthusiasm for a new year, and the erosion of the meaning of school. This was not the case. The Omaha Public Schools opened on a positive note, with students ready to learn and teachers ready to teach. In May 1977, the superintendent said, "People will remember this year in different ways and for different reasons. Some will recall the preparations made by the school district for its first year under court-ordered desegregation. Others will remember their own reservations about the opening of an Omaha school year under circumstances far from normal. Others will have their memories piqued by happenings which have special meaning, of these children who started the school year as wary strangers, who are now firm friends, of the parent who feared the worst only to find the best, and of the bus that never came." The year has been described as one of school as usual. This is not true. The business of education was not usual this year. The transporting of over 10,000 children from one end of the district to the other was not usual. The reassignment of hundreds of teachers was not usual. The creation of primary grade centers and the major reorganization of the junior high school system was not usual. The only thing usual about this year has been the learning process. Students have been able to learn. Teachers have been able to teach. The abilities of students and teachers were not diminished by the unusual circumstances which marked the year. This has made the busy 1976-77 school year not only a good year, but a great year. It will be remembered well for its challenge, for the extra mile walked to meet that challenge, for its achievement,